It's time for the Blue Blows Podcast with your hosts, Alonso and Juan, Alicia Del Valle, and the babyface gimmick in the sky, Roger.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BLEAV for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline. The game starts here.
And the Los Angeles Dodgers are back and ready to kick off the second half of the 2024 Major League Baseball regular season. They start off a 7-game homestand at Chavez Ravine, and they will be kicking it off with, I guess you could say, kind of an East Coast rival in the Boston Red Sox. Boston versus LA, these two teams have met in the 2018 World Series. Obviously, if you go into the NBA and the basketball world, there's still a rivalry between these two cities. Boston, winning the championship this season in the NBA Finals. But joining the show today is someone who we've had on, collaborated with prior. We've been on his program, he's been on ours, and that is friend of the show, Rob Bradford of Baseball Isn't Boring. If you follow anything baseball related, you've probably seen the name, you've probably seen the shirts, and it's good to have Rob in just because the way the Red Sox are playing, the way they're coming into this series, it's a pretty big series for them, and it's a pretty big series for the Dodgers who are looking to get on track. But Rob, thanks for coming on and joining the show again.
You guys are the best, of course. I appreciate it, and I'm psyched to be out here in Los Angeles and watch and get a firsthand look at the billboard that I bought saying thank you Dodgers for Connor Wong. So there you go. It's a big series.
Yeah, we can't forget about Connor Wong.
Cody, you left out, the biggest deal to me. Co-author with Joe Kelly, like damn near
There's
perfect
just
game,
so many accolades to add to this guy's resume.
We got to plug the book every time we go.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It's well timed, with what we think is a day that Joe Kelly's coming back, and I think that was in his contract that anytime he comes off the IL, that his co-author has to be in attendance for it. So yeah, it's well timed. So I appreciate all the plugs, but I most importantly appreciate all that you guys do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then kind of before we get into this series, between the Red Sox and the Dodgers, a team you know very well, and then even the Dodgers, a team you know very well just because of your connections to the team with Joe Kelly. But let's get back to your show, your page, and your YouTube channel, and everything, and that is Baseball Isn't Boring, because I feel like it has grown tremendously over the past 12 calendar months. I've seen, I've been in more player clubhouses. I feel like I'm seeing more and more players wear the shirt, especially the Dodgers one that, cracks me up is the one that's in Japanese. I've seen a couple players, Ryan Yarbrough's one that wears it. I've seen Joe Kelly wear the shirts as well. But how has it been? How has the page grown? And, just go over everything that's kind of happened, even just this season in 2024, where I feel like you guys are just posting more content than ever.
Yeah. So a quick history is that, the Baseball Isn't Boring thing was born in January 2022 when Joe Kelly, we wanted to write this book, but he wasn't on social media. So we had the name for the book. We thought it would be called Baseball Isn't Boring. And so we kind of reverse engineered it, and we started the social account at BB Isn't Boring. We started making up the T-shirts, and ultimately we wrote the book, and they changed the title, but so be it. But as we were going along, we really figured out, wow, there's a lot of meat on this bone when it comes to the message. And, in October, my company Odyssey had asked me to do a daily baseball podcast really a national podcast. I said, well, we have the socials, we have the T-shirts, so let's do it. And ever since then, it's been every day. And as I said, multiple players from all over baseball. And you're right. I think that it has gained steam because I think, number one, people like T-shirts. People like stickers. People like, and they like the message. One of the things that I do, and I've been doing this year, is we've made up these stickers, and a lot of these players, which I don't really know, some of them I do, but a lot of the players I don't know, I go up to them and interview them or ask them to do an interview. I said, first things first, here's a sticker. And it's just the baseballs and boring sticker, and they see the message and they smile because, it's who doesn't like that message? And it sort of breaks the ice. And honestly, like just coming from the All-Star game, we've had some signature moments, but one that jumps out to me just happened the other day was when I went to do that with Luis Ariz and went to give him the sticker, and he waves me off, and he reaches in his back pocket and pulls out a baseballs and boring sticker, which he has been evidently carrying with him as sort of a message to himself, that this is a great game and baseball is indeed not boring. I'm like, oh man, I'm just blown away by that. So there's still a lot of, as I said, a lot of meat in the bone when it comes to the message and the podcast and all the fun stuff that you guys, and this is what it's about, guys, right? I mean, this is about having fun. Like it's about enjoying whatever access we have, whatever conversations we want to have, whatever way we can be entertained. Like this is about having fun. And I think that's the spirit of what Joe really has always been about. And Joe, by the way, as I said, I have to say that because he is the CEO of the entire operation, although he only comes on once every month and a half or so. But still, like that's what Joe represents. And I think that's sort of what we want to represent, is that just to understand why this game is fun and entertaining and just fun to talk about.
Yeah, honestly, you hit a home run right there, just because you guys have grown. You guys have added multiple personalities. I was fortunate enough to go on the segment at the beginning of the year in March where it was, the case for with Reese Green. And I feel like those episodes, I actually listened to almost all of them just because I was curious to see, what other, fans were saying, because it's kind of like me and Roger, we're in our own little bubble. We have a lot of people that are Dodger fans on, so they're kind of in that encapsulated bubble to see. And I was interested to see what everybody else was saying. And then you just doing, the many player interviews, both sides, whether it's on the Red Sox players or just, visiting, teams, or you traveling around. Credit to you. You're doing a great job, and you're one of the guys, and your channel and everything is one of the ones that I follow very much. So just give credit to you. More round of applause for Bradford.
Well, Cody, I appreciate it. And Roger, I always appreciate you. And Cody, you did a great job with that. And what you're talking about is you're talking about Reese Green. This is another thing that I feel honored that we've got a chance to do, is give some people opportunities to have their voice heard. And whether it's people like you who made the case for the Dodgers, and which is, by the way, a lot easier case to be made than I was really anxious to see some of the cases that were made back in spring training for the A's and for the Rockies and those teams. But also, you mentioned Reese Green. Like Reese Green is a guy, whether you know or not, he was the guy who had the viral Halloween costume. Of Randy Johnson and his girlfriend was dressed up as a seagull, and it went viral. And I got the chance to know him a little bit. And turns out he played professionally in the Czech Republic and Australia, and as a stand-up comic. So all these things together, you're checking off a lot of boxes, which I thought would make for a good podcaster. And he's great. And we've had other people who've contributed as well. And so it's just, I appreciate all you guys, and I appreciate all the voices that we've had. And hopefully the voices just keep growing, because this isn't just about me, and this isn't just about Joe. This is about sort of the message that we want to get across.
Awesome. And let's just dive right into it. Before we get to the Red Sox series, you were at the All-Star game. You were for All-Star week. We saw a bunch of player interviews. One that I kind of want to touch on, that because he's a very popular player in Los Angeles right now, and that is Teoscar Hernández. Kind of watching that, interview with him one-on-one. It was the worst kept secret between Boston in terms of multi-year offer, and it was between the Dodgers, who were just saying, hey, here's a 1-year offer. It's beating the qualifying offer. It's kind of in your wheelhouse what you want, but if you're okay with a 1-year commitment, we'll give it to you. And it was kind of down to him either wanting the multi-year offer for less money with a guaranteed job, or the bet on himself deal. What was the vibes, that you got from Hernandez? I mean, because he put on a show this entire season so far. He put on a show in the Derby. He wins the home run derby, the first Los Angeles Dodger to ever do it. And then he ends up, making his second All-Star team as well on top of all of that. And he's been one of, the pillars in this Dodgers offense that it does include, Mookie Betts, even though he's been hurt for about a month now, Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani. But I feel like the Red Sox and their fans are probably wishing that they got this guy just because if you look at the season he's put together. So how was that interview? How was Hernandez?
Well, first off, I don't know if I'm just very fortunate in the Dodgers that I talked to, but I talked to a lot of guys in a lot of clubhouses. I've had such great experiences with a lot of the Dodgers. And obviously, it helps Joe, helps that I know some of the guys, Ryan Brazier and some of these guys. But to get the chance to know to Evan Phillips, Michael Peterson, oh my goodness, what? That was such a joy to get a chance to talk about his journey and how genuinely excited he was. And, so you go down the list and Teoscar Hernández was the latest one. And what struck me really about our conversation was how unbelievably honest he was. I actually probably think I said to him 3 times, "Thank you for being so honest," which is, you shouldn't have to say that, but I was, listen, you don't have to. I didn't even know. I was talking to my producer today, and he had cut the clip from it, and it said the the Red Sox offered 2 years. And all I heard was Red Sox offered 2 years, and I followed up that it said, if they offered 3, would you have signed with them? But I didn't even hear that he said offered 2 years, 28. I didn't even hear that. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, he's giving the terms of what they offered, which you guys are the players don't do that. And he was just so honest throughout this about a 5-minute conversation I had with him. And so it was great. And it wasn't any state secrets. It was fine. He's landed in a great place. He's making $23.5 million this year. He's going to get another payday next year. So I just thought it was a fun conversation. And listen, another thing about it, guys, at the All-Star game, all these guys are in good moods. I mean, that's the thing. That's why it's good to go. All these guys are in good moods, so they're willing to say stuff like that more.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised, how honest he was. Usually when you talk to players about, contract details or teams that were in on a certain player, they're very vague about it. They kind of are giving the front office, answer to it. Yes, they showed interest, but it just ended up not working out. But he gave you year and he gave you number, and that was kind of intriguing to me just because we saw those numbers kind of leaked out. I think someone was saying the Red Sox offered 2 year, 25 to 28 million range, and he just kind of confirm that entirely. So credit to you in your interview. Credit to Teoscar for just being an honest guy. I guess that could have just been a part of him being at the All-Star game and enjoying everything and being happy, because just to be that honest, that's very surprising from a baseball player. And sticking with the All-Star game, I feel like you can't mention the Boston Red Sox without bringing up now the 2024 All-Star MVP, and that's Jarren Duran. I feel like this guy has completely turned around his career. We had, a couple Phillies writers on a couple weeks back, or about a week ago, and we talked about Alec Bowman, how he was in a similar situation where it didn't really start off too good. You've been in Boston. You've covered the team. From when he made his debut to now being one of the, the cornerstone pieces of that offense and making huge strides on defense, where I believe he's 95th in outs above average. What have you seen from him and his growth? And to not only, I think he finished 17th or 14th in All-Star voting in terms of outfield, and then he makes it as reserve. And the big FU about it is that he ends up winning the MVP. So what do you have about him, just briefly, until we get into the series?
Yeah. So it's first of all, the voting is more of a testament to the apathy that the Red Sox fans have come to live through, which will be on display in this series at Dodger Stadium, because when the Dodgers came to Fenway, it was the streets of Boston were taken over by Dodgers fans. The Red Sox fans aren't doing that, and they aren't voting this guy in. That's a work in progress. But you're talking about a guy who has become one of the best players in baseball. Though he plays the way that you would love to see a guy play. He flies around the field. He does everything that you would want. And he's played every game this year too. And he turned the corner, I think, because number one, he's healthy. Number two, he's just more experienced. And number three, and you guys probably familiar with, he's very open about his mental health struggles. And I think that has freed him up a lot. And also not only to talk about it, but also figuring out how to manage his life and his rhythms of being a professional baseball players and the highs and the lows that go with that. One of the things that he told me at the All-Star game was, that I said, do you still journal? Because that was a big thing. And he said, well, when I don't have a lot of thoughts in my head, I journal. When I do have a lot of thoughts in my head, I color. I'm like, oh, you do? It's like, is it like a kid's coloring book? He's like, no, it's an adult coloring book with cuss words, which I color in. I'm like, and all of a sudden everyone like, oh yeah, this is a thing. Whatever, man, like whatever. It's all working for him. He's a dynamic player. And I think that people who haven't seen him play, the fact that they got a chance to see him play at the All-Star game and see him play with the Dodgers against the Dodgers, that'll be fun.
Yeah, interesting player, interesting story, and he's definitely going to be a huge part of the Red Sox. He's been a huge part this entire season. And before, let's get into the Red Sox, because I feel like nobody had expectations for this team. Nobody picked them to even, sniff the playoffs this year. They were kind of, I would say, in the middle. They weren't a rebuilding team, but they weren't necessarily a buying or contending team. Enter the month of June, they've been playing among one of the best teams in baseball right now. Since June 1st, they have the third best record in the MLB, right underneath the New York Mets and the Houston Astros. They're 24-13 coming into this game since June 1st. The pitching's been strong thanks to Andrew Bailey and how much he's revamped this starting rotation. They were bottom, I would say, I think third in the league, especially in the American League in terms of pitching, in terms of team ERA, starting pitching, relief pitching. Andrew Bailey comes in, kind of fixes everything because there's really not a front-end starter on this staff. He's just kind of putting the pieces together and making it work. The offense has been very consistent. Alex Cora, we talked about him on our program, I believe the last episode, where this is a guy, hot commodity, good manager, is coming on to, an expiring contract. Is he going to stay in Boston? We don't know. That's a conversation for another day. But looking at the expectations and kind of where the Red Sox are right now, did you expect this, or are you quite frankly surprised? And do you agree with David Ortiz's comments during the All-Star break where he thinks that they're World Series favorites? Do you think that's more of a homer thing, or do you think there's a realistic shot for this club?
Well, I'll answer the last part first. I think it's both. I think he's both a homer, and you guys know, like, this is in this day and age of baseball. If you get in the postseason, you can do things. You can make it to the World Series if you're the Rangers and Diamondbacks. We still haven't figured out quite if it's good or not, if it's good to win the division or not, because it's not trending that well. So they're a good team. And I can say that maybe 2 months ago I might not say that, but they're a good team because they start off with the starting pitching being good. That carried them. But now they have a lot of young players who have emerged and gotten better and become legitimate threats. We mentioned Duran. Ceddanne Rafaela might win the Rookie of the Year this year. Wilyer Abreu was in contention for a while. The pitchers, Houck and Cutter Crawford and Brian Bayo across the board. Tristan Casas, the one guy that everyone thought, oh, well, it's his time to break out. He's been hurt, and he hasn't come back yet, and you've still been able to keep your head above water. Trevor Story, out for the year, and all of a sudden a guy named David Hamilton, which, by the way, David Hamilton, the Dodgers tried trading for in the offseason. And that was wasn't this version of David Hamilton. It was the other version of David Hamilton. He's improved a ton. So it's just that they are, as we sit here, judging by the stretch that you talked about, judging by the teams that they are now beating, actually good teams, yes, I think they are absolutely for real. Now, they also have the toughest schedule in all of baseball, I think, for the rest of the way. So we'll see, starting with the Dodgers. That's why I think this series is going to be so intriguing.
And then, we had Robbie Hyde come on. He's another avid Red Sox fan. And we kind of asked his thoughts on the Dodgers in terms of the last couple weeks of the season where they kind of just looked defeated, tired. They were dealing with injury after injury. The starting rotation seems to be falling apart. Coming into this series, you see the Red Sox are, playing hot. Obviously, there's a break in between there with the All-Star break. But what are your thoughts on just the Dodgers, with the expectations they had this season and then kind of how they played right now? Are they kind of disappointing in terms of what fans, perceive them to be? Because now you're starting to see, there's holes in the lineup, there's holes in the rotation. Do you think there's, and you even mentioned where it's, if you can get into the postseason, anybody can kind of win the dance. We've seen wild card after wild card make it to the World Series, and we even had the last World Series, the last wild cards in each league ended up making it to the World Series. So when you look at the Dodgers, when they were kind of limping into the All-Star break, is there anything you saw there? Do you think there's something they need to work on? But what was your general thoughts of the Dodgers so far this season, especially up into the break?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel that they are the epitome of wake us up in September and let us get on a little bit of a run heading in October. And I know that for you guys and for Dodgers fans, it's hard to stomach, but that's sort of the reality of this team. They still have a comfortable lead in the division. They don't have to worry about that. They can wait for these guys to get healthy. You can bring them back probably at the right time, and there's absolutely no panic. Yeah, you don't want to be sort of dragged like this way through the season, but as we said before, it's we've seen the other way around it. Like a couple of years ago, historic amount of wins. What did that get you? It's how you're playing going in to the postseason, or how you're equipped, how you're set up. That's the biggest thing. Get your starting pitching right, get your stars right, get your bullpen right, and then you'll be okay. And I feel like, and I know that Dodgers fans who pay the money to go see the games and they want to see their stars and they want to have this shock and awe experience. But I'm just telling you, my perspective of it is wake us up in September and let's go. We'll see. I mean, the Phillies are really, really good. The Phillies are really, really good, and they feel really, really good about themselves. But I still wouldn't bet too much against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. They're going to make trades. Guys are going to get healthy, and then you kind of go from there. The postseason format, the way it is for however you want to, put it now, it is, kind of like a college bracket, March Madness type of feeling, just because there's just so much uncertainty in the postseason. I feel like in any other sport, baseball is the one where you can pretty much have any team win any given time,
More so than, not to interrupt, but more so than any other sport. I don't think there's any NBA, NHL, football. It's if you go in and you're a third wild card or a second wild card, you can win. I mean, you can win. So anyway, yeah, not to interrupt.
Yeah.
But.
And the Dodgers, have been at the short end of the stick. They've gotten eliminated back-to-back years in the NLDS. The 111 win season, that still stings right now, losing that series in the way they did. Getting swept last year kind of, felt the same way, where we kind of just, a lot of us kind of expected something similar to that. But, at the end of the day, the Dodgers, they have these expectations to win a World Series, especially after the offseason they had now. In terms of like what we said with the Red Sox, not coming into this season with much expectations, not really having, I would say, a direction. They replace, their president of baseball operations during the offseason, letting go of, what was his name before?
Chaim Bloom.
Chaim Bloom.
Yeah.
And then kind of making the moves that they have made. We're getting closer to the trade deadline. You already mentioned that the Red Sox have the hardest schedule, for the second half of the season. How big is it for these next couple weeks to see if this team is really buying or selling? Because we've already seen some, talks that the Red Sox either may not sell or may not buy, and that they actually may trade away some players. And we'll get to that one player at the end. But what are you thinking of this with this deadline coming up? How important is this next stretch of games?
I think it's important because I saw last year, sort of on the flip side of things, the Chicago Cubs lost 2 out of 3 coming on the All-Star break. They were below 500, but they kept leading on the run differential. Like, we think that might be something in there because our run differential is good. And sure enough, they go on a run for the last week and a half and end up buying Candelario. So it can certainly turn one way or the other. But I think that the thing that we're waiting, we don't know how Breslow's going to act. We don't. We knew Chaim Bloom. He was slow to pull the trigger on a lot of these trades. and it didn't work out. And he really like his fate was sealed, I think, because of the deadlines. But they don't need to add a lot. What they need to do is add. They need to add, whether it's Justin Turner or a fifth starter or whatever it is, just to say, all right, pat on the back, let's go get him. We believe in you. All right, that's it. And because I think that they're well equipped, but I think they do have to send that message, especially after the last couple of years.
Yeah, and then say things do go wrong, or say, ownership, they still want to go with the plan, whatever they have in place in terms of, we didn't expect to compete this year. Let's, trade the chips that we have this season to get, better players or free some, salary for the next, 2025, 2026, and so on. One of the players that we've had kind of come up, and I feel like this guy's been rumored since the winter, and we brought up to Robbie Hyde as well. That's Kenley Jansen. And let's not, this is, Jansen's coming back to Los Angeles for the first time in a couple years now, I believe. Didn't get the chance to come over last season since LA went to Boston last year. Jansen, I feel like we saw his comments on Foul Territory where, he mentioned that he wanted to retire a Dodger, and he's already made it known that he wants the Red Sox, he wants to play. He's a closer. He wants to play on a contending team. He wants to have the ball in the ninth inning in the postseason. If that's not there for him, do you think he tries, to push to get traded? And the Dodgers, they were linked in the winter. It seems like it didn't work out, obviously. And then now we're seeing the name come up again. What are your thoughts on the whole Kenley Jansen situation?
Well, I think that he's the wild card in terms of the Red Sox, that even if they if they get the right deal, they might trade him because he can bring something back. He's in the last year of his contract. But I would be very, very careful. If I were the Red Sox and I was in it, I would not want to trade Kenley Jansen. He's pitching really, really well. You don't know who's equipped to pitch in ninth. And don't tell me Liam Hendricks, because the guy's coming off of Tommy John surgery, to say, hey, go be our closer. I think that's unrealistic. So I think Kenley is the type of guy that you need on a team if you want to make a run. And we all know with Kenley, his goal is to pitch that final pitch of the season. He says he hasn't watched end of a World Series because of how much that stung, that he didn't get a chance to pitch that final pitch. So he's chasing that, and he could get it one way or the other, whether the Red Sox or whether it's being traded. So I would like to give you an answer, say Kenley Jansen is or isn't going to get traded, but I do feel like this is sort of one players with their middle ground because of his contract status, not because of whether or not they are going to win or lose, but because of their contract status. So I heard, actually one team that I know has interest in him is the San Diego Padres, and and there's other teams as well. The Phillies might have interest in him. So he's a guy that is of a value, and we know that he fits perfectly the Dodgers. The thing he said about retiring a Dodger, I mean, I think felt like that was kind of taken out of context a little bit, because it was like, okay, sure, I would love to, but I like to have $1 million, and it's probably not going to happen. But he's gonna go wherever he ends up. He has that choice after this year. He's trending to be a Hall of Fame pitcher. So I think, and believe me, I do know this. If he's not playing in Boston and he's not getting a chance to go for a World Series in Boston, he absolutely would love to pitch for the Dodgers, not because of what he said when you're talking about, but because he has a house. And he has shown me pictures of that house a million times, how much he loves that house. And the fact that he didn't have to go to the All-Star game and spend a week in that house, oh my goodness, it was like glorious for Kenley. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, though. I mean, he is definitely an interesting conversation at the deadline.
It's an interesting type of situation the Red Sox are in, because it's not the first time we've seen a closer be traded on a contending team. A couple seasons ago, the Brewers did the same thing. They traded away Josh Hader when they were in the middle of a playoff race. So my last question before I pivot to Roger before we let you go, if they do trade Jansen and say they still are contending, is that kind of like demoralizing for the locker room? Like, because you're kind of close to these guys, you talk to these guys. If Jansen's gone, but they still bring in a piece to say, and we're still trying to win, we're still trying to get that third wild card spot, do you kind of feel a little bit, let down of that, especially if they don't do some type of major acquisition? Like you mentioned, starting rotation's a big need right now in terms of depth. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's he's one of the few veteran guys on that team. It's kind of crazy how few veterans they have. I think the only position player over 30 or 30 or over is Rob Refsnyder. And so Kenley is absolutely like a much needed veteran voice, and he's good. I mean, he's good right now. So yeah, I think that might, yes, they aren't going to trade him if they keep going down this road. But like I said, I mean, you mentioned the hater thing. I will say this. You're right. It's a great example. But how did it work out for the Brewers? They learned their lesson. That was a dagger. It went the other way. You gotta be really careful about reading the room when you make these trades. So yes, but something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And Roger, is there anything you have left to add to the conversation before we let Rob go?
I just wanted to follow up with Rob because you mentioned it that Kenley Jansen is trending to become a Hall of Famer. I've thought that now for a number of years because when he is currently fifth, right behind Kimbrough all time, they're by one, right? So those two guys, I think they're right up to the top three guys are Hall of Famers. I don't know how many more years Kenley's got in him, but he's from reaching Lee Smith, he's about maybe about 30, 35, 40 saves. So if he does another 2-3 years, he's going to be top three. I mean, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's where I would put him, right, Rob?
I think he's, well, I could say he's chasing 500, but he'll say he's chasing 550. So it's like, you get into that territory, all bets are off. I do think that, and we can't forget too that he's still good. Like he's still good, and what would go a long way is if he did get that final out of the season, that would certainly, we know how that works, right? That would certainly like help his cause. So it's I'm glad that he's coming back and getting a chance to be back at Dodger Stadium because I know that how much his teammates love him back. I know how much Joe loves him. He told me some great stories, and so I think it's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be great to have Kenley come back. In terms of fan perception, I'm interested to see how that is just because it is a very, up and down history with Kenley. A lot of people remember the failures, but like I agree with Roger. I remember the good times, and he is the all-time, saves leader for the franchise. So seeing him come back to Chavez Ravine, it's going to be great. I don't know if it would be great for the Dodgers if he pitches in one of those games or all three of those games or two of those games because that would probably just mean they lost or they're in line to lose. But I think it'll be good to see him welcome back. I'm interested to see if the Dodgers do anything like on the video board or just announcing his name again because it's not too often, you get an American League player to come back. But Roger, if there's anything else you want to add on or are we going to wrap this baby up?
No, I'm good.
I have one more question. I have one question for you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned Alex Cora. I'm very intrigued by this. So as you mentioned, Alex Cora is potentially a free agent at the end of the year, and we have let's play this out. Dave Roberts, great manager, but if you lose, you get bounced again. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that there's a very low percentage of this happening. Let's say they move on from him. There's obviously a ton of options you can go. A lot of guys probably already in the Dodger system. But when we talk about Cora, we always try to guess like, well, if not the Red Sox, where is he going to land? As a free agent, he would want to go to a team that's like talented as the Dodgers. But here's my question is that would his prior history with the Houston Astros dissuade the Dodgers from hiring Alex Cora, in your opinion?
I mean, I'll let Roger take it after me because right off the bat, this is how I feel. The Astros stuff, the whole scandal, it sucks. Everything about it when you look back at that season and how everything, unfolded, and then years later in 2019's offseason when we're finding out about everything, and you look at how things ended, it's frustrating. But then I also look back at that series where, they lost, two pivotal games at home. Kenley Jansen blowing the lead in game 2 and then, Yu Darvish getting blown up at home in game 7. So I've moved on. I've moved on from the players. Carlos Correa, he's doing his own thing. Alex Bregman's doing his own thing. Jose Altuve. The reason why is just because those players still continued to be good players after the scandal, and the Astros ended up winning another World Series, after that. So I think it just proves, yes, they did what they did that year, but they're still good players. They're still, Cora's still a good manager. Hinch in Detroit, they're trying to rebuild their own thing up there. It's not working out yet, but it could be. In terms of Cora coming to Los Angeles, we talked about this the other week, and I think the only way the Dodgers let go of Roberts is if they lose in the NLDS again. I think this front office and the team and ownership will be fine if they at least make it to the NLCS. If they lose in the NLCS to a very good Phillies team who we've seen, I got an up close and personal look at this team in Philadelphia covering the team and just saw how good they are, saw how deep their starting rotation is. I think they would be content with that because then 2025, looking at the offseason, they could go after Sasaki. They're already expecting Shohei Ohtani to be back in the starting rotation. You got Kershaw for another option year there as well. And I feel like they could put all their chips in the basket, but then say a guy like Alex Cora does make himself available. Do the Dodgers kind of just, think a little bit like, hey, will we be better hands with Cora? It's not out of the line where we see some teams just pivot, even though Dave Roberts still has 1 year on his contract. They could just hire Cora and just say, hey, thank you, Dave Roberts, but we're going to let you go and you can go somewhere else. So it's going to be interesting. I'll say it's more of like a 50-50 chance, but if Dave is bounced and the Dodgers are bounced in that first round, I think he's as good as gone, and Cora would probably be my most logical option for that. But Roger, what say you?
I mean, the whole Cora thing's into it. I mean, Rob, in Boston, like we get this here in LA, like, Dodgers, they play good, they're playing really, really good, they're on a win streak. You hear nothing about Dave Roberts. Once they start losing, they lose one game, all you see is fire Roberts. I'm curious, is there anything like that in Boston with Cora? Like, if they don't play good for 1 game or 2 games, do you see on social media the call to fire Cora already,
not this year because the talent level was perceived as not being great, and he's coming off 2 last place finishes, but there was this element of, well, what do you have to work with? So especially not this year. I mean, this year, honestly, I think has been Alex Cora's best year, and he's absolutely getting the most out of this team. So even if they went on to lose 5 in a row, I don't think people can say, oh my goodness, Alex Cora's doing a crappy job. No, I don't think that's the case. So I think he's entrenched himself. He's having a pretty good free agent year is what I'm saying.
And is he one of those managers though that, because everybody knows the Dodgers are a very analytical team, and there's a lot of talk, even though they say it's not really coming from them, but when Dave Roberts puts out a lineup, it's not just Dave Roberts. It's the front office, and they're the ones making the decision. So, how much, I guess, freedom does Cora have? Is that a situation he'd be comfortable in, first of all, or is that kind of the same thing that he's doing already in Boston?
Yeah, I think that he's embraced that stuff. I think he's had the ability to pick through it, and with Chaim Bloom, I mean, Chaim Bloom was the ultimate Tampa analytical sort of way of doing things, just like Andrew. He came under Andrew Friedman. So it was, I think that part of the relationship wasn't a problem, I don't think. And so I think Alex Cora embraces a lot of new things. And this year there's been a ton of new things. I mean, they hired half of Driveline. So it's, I think that he's done a good job of doing that. And I think he would be fine in that respect.
Okay. So, I mean, so getting back to, I mean, we've seen, guys like Kenley Jansen, Justin Turner, they played for Alex Cora, and it seems they really liked him, right? I mean, so
love him.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was talk of, past seasons like Carlos Correa coming to the Dodgers, and the fans just wouldn't have that. I'm thinking it'd probably be different with Cora kind of now that we've gotten, 5-6 years past that. So, but like I said, I think that whole manager situation is just such a strange thing because, you have Dave Roberts, he hasn't had that success in the postseason, but he's still one of the best managers in baseball, right? And I think just so much pressure that's put on him. Anybody, even if they would let go of Dave Roberts and you bring in Cora, say you bring him in next year, he's going to have, the same guys, Shohei, Mookie. And if they get out, go and get like somebody like Sasaki. I mean, that's just more pressure on that manager position. So I think it's one of those, like, it's hard to win, when you're the manager. I mean, not win, games, but just kind of be in that spot where all the fans are going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the guy. We love this guy. And he's going to be expected to win. And once they lose, everybody's going to be right on them in LA. It's going to be like, fire this guy.
Yeah, you take your chances with you'd make that trade-off by having Shohei Ohtani, though. So it's all good.
But it'll be an interesting series. We're gonna start closing this up here right now, so you can get on with your life. But the thing is, big series, start of the second half. We just got after our All-Star break. Trade deadline's less than 2 weeks away once this episode drops. But Rob, it was good to have you on. If anybody who hasn't already seen your work, where can they find you? Just plug all your stuff before you get out of here, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, I would just say go to the socials at BB isn't boring. That's one-stop shopping for T-shirts and podcasts and whatever else. So yeah, I've got to, when I'm out here, I got to do something with Joe, obviously, and I have some ideas. We've been doing this thing where we make people eat wasabi because Wasabi Cloud Storage is our sponsor, and so we make them eat, like made Tristan Cassis eat a big glob of wasabi. But I only do that with players on the injured list because I don't want to affect their performance. So now Joe might be out of the equation. So I got to find somebody else. But yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. I really do. And anytime you need anything from me, just let me know.
Yeah, and it'll be a big series.
The book on Amazon, right?
The book, yeah.
Plug the book.
There you go.
Yeah. And it'll be a big series for both of us. I believe we're covering one of the games, and obviously you'll be there posting your content as well. So be sure to follow Rob and Baseball Isn't Boring, and be sure to follow the Bleed Los podcast. We're going to have content throughout the rest of this week and then next week as well. And especially with the trade deadline coming up, we're going to have a lot of opinions on that. So be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.
This episode has been brought to you by BetOnline. The game starts here.